Have you ever found yourself so pissed off about the news and you're just like going crazy and you never thought to wonder, is this true? Hi, I'm Arnie Cole, your spiritual fitness researcher and coach. Welcome to Spiritually Fit Today, where every day is a workout for your soul. One step, one choice, one spiritual rep at a time. The best way to become a stronger Christ follower tomorrow is to get spiritually fit today, because what you do today matters. Today, we're talking about those powerful stories in the media and how sometimes it just grabs you and it makes you so angry that the last thing you want to do is check to see if it's even true. And it's very serious for us as Christ followers, because how do we see beyond a dramatic storyline that may even cause us to get so angry that we might even sin in our thoughts or actions? How do we discern the facts? So our memory verse for this week is, but test them all. Hold on to what is good. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. So I have two news guys, former news guys, a journalism, news broadcast, not podcast broadcast. They didn't even know what a podcast was back then. With me, I have Randy and Bruce. So we talked about narratives and how that messed us up, trying to figure out what is truth. But today we're going to tap into insight on these narratives. How can we enjoy a good story and verify that there's some truth behind it? So, Randy, how do narratives or storytelling impact the way news is delivered?
A narrative is an approach to a story, and a lot of times a narrative is driven by it can be political beliefs. It could be, whether you're a conservative, whether you're a liberal. Take a story and work it down that line of ideology, and that's how narratives come about. And you'll see that, especially with news organizations, network news organizations, it's pretty obvious, or it can be pretty obvious, what those narratives are. I had an example I was just thinking of something that's kind of in the news right now, that's sort of narrative driven. Can I share that
Sure.
at all? Right now, there's a lot of, and there will be even more stories about the creation of electric grids, because there needs to be more electricity to power chip makers for AI and so on. But I was just struck this week. I was reading an article, and it was a perfect example of how there are two different narratives to covering the same story. The first one was covering it from the angle of the job creation, all of these jobs that are going to be created. This is great. The tax revenue that's going to come in. This is great. And then the politician or elected official that really drove the creation of this electric grid, and how it was going to be so helpful for the community. That was the first story. The second story talked about the how it was going to change the environment of the area, how it was going to, if they were going to allow these grids to take place, it was going to sap electricity. It was going to cause rolling brownouts across the area. It was going to impact electric bills. Electric bills were going to be higher. Same story, creation of this facility, two completely different narratives as to how they approached it, when in essence, they're all important issues. They're all issues that should be addressed. In a way, they should be all brought into the same story, but they weren't. That's just a recent example that I can think of how, narratives drive the coverage of a story.
You got to sell copy, okay? Otherwise, you won't be a journalist for very long. But oftentimes, you set up the story, you, the journalist or the reporter, sets up the story so you want to believe it. I used to work with violent children, and I worked with a kid that the news was very interested in. And you would just see this picture of the kid, and you would just think he was the cutest, underprivileged kid that there ever could be. And what had happened was he had a tendency of killing people, ran with this gang called the Crips. But the narrative, the picture, I mean, a poster child. You guys thrive on poster children and whatever story. How do we even have a chance when you've got something that you want to really feel sorry for, really feel bad for, and yet maybe the truth is something the exact opposite? Help me
Yes.
out here.
So basically, you're asking how stories to believe things and then confirm those things over and over again. I mean, so you've got when we talk about news stories, you've got in my mind two types. I mean, you've got small stories, plural, a bunch of news stories, more granular, story about this, story about that, a story about another thing. And I think you have story at the bigger level. And, news agencies now have gravitated toward the point at which they've got an overarching narrative or story that ties together the way they report all the news. And in that story, there's a good guy and there's a bad guy. There's a villain, right? And there's a set of problems. And they've tapped into the fact that the human brain is wired for narrative, that narrative strikes at the level of gut instinct and emotion. Human brain can process information at blinding speed when it's presented in the form of a story or a narrative. And so if a news agency's sort of narrative, ongoing narrative that happens over the years, Fox or CNN or MSNBC, if they can get people to buy into that narrative, or even better, if they can tell the narrative in a way that most of their audience loves and resonates with them emotionally, their viewers or their readers are less likely to receive information from opposing narratives or believe it. They're less likely to fact check it, basically, much less likely to fact check it. And so,
a stronger story.
yeah,
You're convinced.
So
Why
I mean,
bother?
for Christians, I think, at the 30,000 foot level, I want to constantly remind myself that God has given us the Bible, which tells us the true story of the whole world at the 30,000 foot level. Here's who is really in charge of the world. Here's what a human being is. Here's why we're flawed. Here's what our deepest problem is. Here's what the solution is. And I think a difficult thing often for Christians when we spend so much time being shaped by media narratives, the difficult thing is that I think those media narratives, we would never admit to this. And we would vociferously argue against it if someone suggested about us. But our favorite media outlet functions for us as the true story of the whole world. And the Bible's story is kind of secondary. We hear it on Sunday mornings or maybe in our quiet times, but we don't know how to let the true story of the whole world help us critique media narratives. And I think that's one important thing to do, to not let a given media narrative have an iron grip over my mind. And then another is just more basic and common sense. Just refuse to let my brain be shaped entirely by my preferred media outlets to fact check.
Oh,
Like
that's
Randy has
easy.
been saying over and over again, fact check.
That's
Go to
easier
an article
said
from a
than
different
done.
perspective, It is easier said than done.
I don't believe this now, but as a non-believer, I used to believe that truth is just a perception. It's what I perceive. It sounds like what you guys are saying is, you betcha, truth is a perception, and I've got a narrative for you that's going to influence that perception. So if that's true, what in the world do we do as Christ followers in this day and age to have any kind of idea of what to do? I mean, it's just baffling to me.
Well, I think it is very difficult. I do think, though, let's take an example of how a person doing news has to, and I would hope a news viewer trying to digest information would siphon some of this stuff that they're getting. We have to understand that there is an ultimate truth, and even in the covering of news stories, the idea is to get to what that truth is. For instance, we're having a lot of discord in cities because of the immigration situation right now, and there are a lot of different truths that go out. I think it's very important that, like in what we're experiencing now, the social unrest, that as reporters who are covering it, but then also as news viewers, we step back, we take a clear-eyed look at the situation, not in an emotional way, but in somewhat of a factual way. And we say, what is actually going on? What am I being told? What does this side say? What does that side say? But take a clear-eyed view, not an emotional view. For a news viewer, to always keep in mind when they're watching something like this is they have to, as best they can, identify the possible narrative creators in a situation. And by that I mean that even in sad situations like this, there are people that will try to take advantage of them for their own good. I say the people to watch out for are those that run the fastest to the hot microphone, that want to give their opinions on things. I think you've got to deal with those types of people, and be a little bit wary of them. So if we get too emotionally involved in it and we follow the narrative builders, we're going to wind up not getting the ultimate truth of what's going on, and that's what we want.
And the bottom line is you're going to continue, even as a Christ follower, to get angrier and angrier, more upset, and less tolerant of the situation. Because there's been tons of studies that starting the day off with your news feed with all the negativity kind of sets the pace for the rest of your day if you're not careful. So it's daunting as a Christ follower trying to navigate this stuff. First, to just get the facts, and then this thing called empathy or Christian love, caring for your brother. It's like, wow, where does that come in? And we're done for today, but we'll be back. I mean, this is super complicated especially for those of us who want to be a well-informed citizen making good decisions for our society. So our soul pump exercise today is practice cross-examination in your mind. Take one narrative-driven news piece that's making you mad. Okay, be aware of, what's really bugging you, and cross-examine that today. And is it worth, one, being so upset that you could hurt your testimony, maybe break family relationships? Is it really worth it? Take the time and take a look and fact check those things before you pay a price. Just try it today in your soul pump exercise. Our prayer for today is, dear Lord, stories move our hearts. You taught using parables, powerful stories with truth. But we also know the enemy can use false stories to mislead us. Give us wisdom to discern truth even in gripping narratives. Help us not to be cynical, but to be thoughtful, to verify and seek truth out. Keep us anchored in your word so we can measure every story against what is righteous, just, and true. In your name we pray. Amen. Before you rush back into your day, pause. You just finished a spiritual rep, and it mattered. Spiritual fitness isn't about perfection. It's about showing up daily. So celebrate the step you took today. And if this podcast encouraged you, share it with someone who needs a little hope and strength. Join us tomorrow for another Spiritually Fit Today workout, because what you do today truly matters, and tomorrow you'll be glad you did.